from the College Football Hall of Fame in downtown Atlanta. This is bonus coverage now, and the next 2.5 hours are brought to you by Brian Hammaker and his team at North Alabama Mortgage. Look, they serve all of Alabama, Florida, and Tennessee. They're going to help you get your offer accepted when you're pre-approved with North Alabama Mortgage. Lock in your rate now for a conventional VA or FHA loan. They do purchases and refinances as well. It's North Alabama Mortgage, and we appreciate them so much making the show possible here today from SEC Media Days. Now, at sometime we may get the phone lines open at 256-576-4977. You can also text the show at 7239-TA-SHOW. That's 732-982-7469. That is a great way to communicate with us, especially here while we are at SEC Media Days. Now, my personal Twitter feed is at Thom Abraham Show, and the station's feed is 97.7 ESPN. We are also on the Facebook at 97.7 ESPN, where you can watch the show. Welcome to those of you that are watching the show there. And, of course, our Twitch and YouTube channel is WZZN TV. So find us on YouTube and on Twitch at WZZN TV, and you can watch all of it there, including our guests that will be joining us throughout. We have got Captain Cool here mixing the show, doing a great job with the video as well on location here. And there are tons of videos and comments and things that are being put up on the Facebook page, the YouTube page. You're going to want to watch the YouTube page later on, after hours, whatever. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff being shot from the house that we're staying at and all that kind of cool stuff. There's a lot of that going on as well on our YouTube channel at WZZN TV, so you can check that all out. Now, the lay of the land here, in my opinion, of course, you've been listening. Those of you that have been listening, of course, to the dudes with the talking ball. But I'll give you my take. First of all, this is totally different than anything we've ever done before here or at Hoover. Now, in Hoover, you know, we're always in that hallway between the Winfrey Hotel and the Galleria, and everything is going on. All the breakout rooms are upstairs. It's all very condensed, and it's really kind of nice. We are quite spread out here. Radio Row, there's 34 radio stations here. Radio Row is in the second floor of the College Football Hall of Fame, and there's an atrium down below where the all of the main breakout room, if you will, is down below where the main press conferences are going to be, and you're going to hear a lot of stuff from that throughout the week. You'll hear stuff live coming from that main room. So it's a little bit of a different setup. We are in front of a display, ironically, for HBCU schools behind me here, and there's like Deion Sanders' kid's jersey is hanging back here behind me. Or how about that? Steve McNair's helmet and Steve McNair's jersey from Elkhorn State is back there as well. There's some other stuff that is here. What I don't understand is why Alabama A&M, who is the defending champions of the SWAC, why their stuff isn't displayed there. Where is John Stallworth's jersey? Okay? Where is, like, Robert Mathis's gear? That's all I'm saying, okay? That's all I'm saying about that. Now, it's a little bit clunky here as opposed to Hoover. I got to tell you, it is, but we're going to do fine. I can tell you that. We got plenty coming up for you on the show, and we are going to be fine. LSU, Missouri, and Ole Miss are on the docket today. We will give you projections for those teams, as we do every year, for the teams that are featured that day. By the end of the week, I will have given you the result in all 168 regular season games that the SEC teams play. And I'm just going to tell you that. Now, something else is interesting here today. I saw a station from Houston here. I've never seen a station from Houston, I don't think, before. I know they're here to cover, I'm sure, Texas A&M. Nobody here from Austin or Norman, Oklahoma yet. I'm just saying we haven't seen that yet. There are about 34 outlets in all here. We are the only one from North Alabama, so go figure. Well, I guess we're the only sports talk radio station in North Alabama, so what do you expect? Coming up in a few minutes, Michael Borkley will join us from the Rebel Report in Sports Talk Mississippi. He'll join us as the Rebs and Lane Kiffin are up this afternoon. They cover all of the state of Mississippi with the Sports Talk Mississippi show. It's broadcast all throughout the state of Mississippi. Then Paramount Sports' Lee Sterling will join us to help us with some win totals on the season. You know, Lee has been featured on my show for like 15 years in multiple markets. Leah's been with me in Nashville, in Florida, in Montgomery, wherever my show has been broadcast. I've had Lee Sterling with me. This is the first time in 15 years that we have met face to face, which is kind of interesting. So Lee is coming up in a little while, and we'll talk about win totals for the three teams that are being featured here today. Plus, we'll get Alabama, Auburn, and Tennessee in there with Lee as well. Now, at 11:45, we will have live coverage of Greg Sankey's State of the SEC address. And immediately after that, Georgia Bulldog legend Buck Bellew will be on set with me. And I said 11:45. At 10:45. I'm still jacked up. Let me change this in my notes. I am still jacked up with the Eastern and the Central Time Zone thing because I just am not very bright. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I am just not very bright, and apparently that is tripping me up a little bit, and I don't know why. But in any event, at 10:45, we will have live coverage of Greg Sankey's State of the SEC address, and after that, Georgia Bulldog legend Buck Bellew will be on set with me. What reaction to Sankey's address? That coming up about 10:15 Central Time. Okay, so we'll have that happening for you then. Now, 11:15 Central Time. See what I'm saying? I'm looking over at Captain Cool. He thinks I'm a moron. I can't get it right. I just can't get it right. At 10:30, or is it 11:30? No, at 11:30. At 11:30, Brian Kelly takes the podium for the very first time in the SEC, and we will bring you that live as well. So that's coming up at 11:30 Central Time. Is that busy enough for you? I don't know what I'm doing. I'll be honest with you. I have my schedule here, and my times are all messed up. Back in a little glass booth there, playing the Platters That Matter and the Stacks of Wax, answering the phones and keeping us on the air. It's DJ Grizzy Grizz. Hey, Grizz, I got to tell you, man, I am all messed up. Why is one stupid hour messing me up that much? Does it make any sense? But I should be smart enough, I just got done with a vacation. I spent a week and a half in the Eastern Time Zone. I don't know what to do with my hands. I don't know what to do with these times. It's just weird. Just the whole thing. I don't know what that is in my ear that I'm hearing. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. Vacation? Are you out of your mind? There's no vacation here. We're here 12 hours a day. There's no vacation. This is work, my friend. This is not like this is not vacation. Oh, let me get this out of the way quickly because we're going to be locking and loading here. Oh, by the way, these guys wanted to play pool with me last night. I'm like, what are you guys, out of your mind? They're like, oh, yeah. Oh, let's play pool with the big dog. I'm like, get out of here. I'm Italian. I grew up with a pool stick in my hand. Are you kidding me? I don't know if there's any video of that. I got to check with Kay. Apparently there is some, but suffice to say, I took them out behind the woodshed. The only bad thing about it was the fact that their balls were all over the table, and I had to navigate my way around. That we were playing 8-ball, you know what I mean? And so I had to kind of do a lot of bank shots and things like that. But it was ridiculous. I just, they didn't know what they were getting into. yeah. They yeah they weren't sure what they were what they were getting into. But let me give a little love here quickly to Doug Lavelle. Who is Doug Lavelle? We don't know. He's a listener, but he had Rory McIlroy at 18 under, Jordan Spieth at 12 under, and Xander Schauffele at 10 under for the win in our British Open Challenge at 40 under par. So congratulations to him. He wins the gift certificate to the overnight stay at the Gunnersville State Park in the lodge there. So that's very, very cool for him. All right, let me get a break in here. When we come back, Michael Borkley is going to join us, and we're going to talk Ole Miss. We'll work in some state, too, because he covers that as well. But we'll talk a little bit about Ole Miss and state next, right here on the Thom Abraham Show, live from SEC Media Days. Today's show brought to you by North Alabama Mortgage on 97.7 ESPN The Zone. And welcome back. SEC Media Days at the College Football Hall of Fame. Today's show brought to you by North Alabama Mortgage. I am Thom Abraham. And Captain Cool is about to put up a picture onto Twitter. Very, very ironic. Our set is right next to Oklahoma versus Texas. Basically a little promotion for the great rivalries. There's Michigan and Ohio State, of course, the Iron Bowl, Army, Navy, all in this area. But we are literally right against Oklahoma, Texas. And a couple of years, that'll become a big SEC rivalry. Joining us now, a guy who knows something about rivalries, Egg Bowls, and things like that. Michael Borky is here, of course, from the Rebel Report and Sports Talk Mississippi. How you doing, man?
Doing well, doing very well. Don't expect fireworks out of Lane Kiffin today, though.
Really?
Well, it depends on what he's asked. If you
Fireworks
ask him about transfer portal
yeah.
or NIL, you're going to get something out of him. But if you're like I talked to somebody earlier who was like, well, what's Kiffin going to say about quarterbacks? Nothing. He's not going to tell you anything about his quarterback battle at all. So it depends on the subject matter, but his football team, he's not going to give you anything. NIL transfer portal, he'll give you something.
He's going to say quarterback battle? Yeah, we have one.
Yeah,
we have a quarterback situation.
He might even mention 3. I mean, there's 2 that are in the battle, but he might just do the whole coach thing where all 3 of them do really good things.
Who do you think emerges?
I think it's going to be Jackson Dart.
Yeah.
Now, what's fascinating about the quarterback battle is they're similar skill sets, but one has a higher ceiling than the other, but that same high ceiling also has a much lower floor. Jackson Dart, I believe, based on what I've seen and heard, is more talented than Luke Altmaier. He's got a higher talent ceiling, but his issue early in spring, and in fairness to him, he had been with the program for a couple of weeks before spring practice started.
Right.
But in the spring, he wasn't protecting the football well. Lane Kiffin said that he was trying to win the job with every throw instead of just playing quarterback, so he's turning the football over a lot. Luke Altmaier, a blue chipper in his own right, a homegrown kid, lower ceiling, but protects the football better. And so it's just going to be a determination of if Jackson Dart can protect the football better, he's going to be your guy. If he's turning it over still, then it's going to be Luke Altmaier, who's safer, but will protect the ball.
You know, the narrative around Lane Kiffin had always been, he'll beat you 45-41, 52-50, all of that kind of stuff. That, though, is a little bit of a false narrative, isn't it? Because it seems like they have begun to play. It seemed like the second half of last season, and maybe they're starting to play a little bit better defense. He knows what it takes. He knows what an SEC team needs to look like to really, truly be a championship team. You got to play good defense, and they have begun to play a much better defense, it seems like.
Absolutely. If you look at the stats and all that from last year, just 2021 Ole Miss football, you think, they were awful defensively. But then you look at it game by game.
Right.
And after Arkansas, where they won 52-51 and neither defense could do anything, they got better. Matt Corral hurt his ankle, couldn't play much. He played, but couldn't be the dynamic quarterback that he was. They won games down the stretch on defense. I mean, they outscored Texas A&M defensively, or got close to it anyway. They had a pick six. They had a safety in that game. They were much better towards the end of the season, and that will be a unit of strength yet again, even though Sam Williams, the defensive end, is gone to the Cowboys. Chance Campbell is gone, their middle linebacker, but defensive line they feel like is the deepest it's been in modern Ole Miss history.
Right.
And the secondary returns everybody. So despite the 30,000 feet view thinking, not a good defense, they should be. They will be. Based on personnel, it's actually going to be probably their better side.
You know, whether it was Tommy Tuberville or David Cutcliffe or Hugh Freeze and now Lane Kiffin, it always felt like there's a ceiling.
Yeah.
Right? There's that ceiling. And certainly, Hugh Freeze got over on Nick Saban in Alabama. They had those wins there. But now last year, a 10-win team. Does it feel like they can break through, though? Can they win the West? Can they ever win the West as long as Lane is there?
That's we're going to find out if the new strategy works. So you're in Alabama. Your Alabama listeners know very well that Ole Miss has struggled even when they've won. I mean, the two Hugh Freeze wins, what did Alabama do those 2 years? They lose to Ole Miss, but they went to the national championship, and they won the national championship. Yeah. In those 2 years, this Ole Miss team is fascinating because Lane Kiffin has decided, and he told everybody day one, The transfer portal is like free agency, and I'm going to build a roster like NFL teams do. The transfer portal is a strategy that's here to stay for him. I've heard that in recruiting this coming class, they're going to sign a maximum of 12 high school kids.
Wow.
They're going to roster build through portal, and I think it's kind of brilliant because as the Alabama fan listening to this knows, if Ole Miss, especially in the NIL era, but it's always been this way, tries to recruit the same way Alabama recruits, guess who's going to win? Alabama. How do I know that? About 6 decades of sample size that tells you that Alabama is going to be better at adding players and the better players than Ole Miss. So what have they decided to do? Transfer portal. They've got a former 5-star running back. Zach Evans was at TCU.
Right.
Michael Trigg, the tight end, former 5-star, was at Southern Cal. They returned 4 of their 5 offensive linemen, but right tackle is going to be a transfer. All the starting wide receivers but one are going to be transfers. Will it work? Maybe, maybe not, but at least Ole Miss is giving themselves a chance now to add players that are talented enough to possibly win these games. Will it mesh? I don't know. But doing it the Alabama way is just going to get you beat because you can't do it the Alabama way. So I applaud Lane Kiffin for trying something different because Ole Miss coaches of the past have kind of just all done it the same way, and they've, as you said, they've had a ceiling. We don't know what Lane Kiffin's ceiling is yet, and I think that's more interesting than we've seen lately.
Yeah. Michael Borky with us here from the Rebel Report and from Sports Talk Mississippi, talking a little Ole Miss, who will be on the docket here today. The concept with NIL is that the richer states, there's a lot of money in Texas, a lot of money in Florida, a lot of money in North Georgia here, that's a great equalizer for states like Alabama and Mississippi that maybe there's not as much money within the state. Is there a sense that there is enough money to satisfy the NIL kids that do want to chase the big buck?
They're trying. They've got the collective like everybody else. And honestly, I'm quite impressed by the structure they have. They don't have Texas A&M money, but who has Texas A&M money? They don't have Georgia money either, but Ole Miss is actually in pretty good shape compared to some people that you would consider on their tier. They're not on Alabama's tier even. But with like Mississippi State, for example, Ole Miss is way ahead of Mississippi State in NIL and structure. And what they found is if they go head-to-head with kids that are considering Texas A&M, they're going to lose because they can't afford that. But the portal fits their budget, which is another layer of college football recruiting that is new.
Right.
But it fits their budget. They're pretty well-funded, but they know that there's a ceiling. There's a ceiling that they'll never be able to get past. Small state, very little industry in the state. But they're set up okay. Better than I expected.
I've got them at 9-3. In fact, I have them coming out of the chute rolling. They'll be maybe top 5. I have them at 8-0 before they go to Texas A&M.
It's possible.
I do. I have them beating Auburn at home, and I have them winning that game at LSU. I don't think they get pushed much till then. I have them then hitting a bump with Texas A&M, Alabama, and at Arkansas.
Yeah,
so
the back end of the schedule is pretty brutal.
I have them winning the Egg Bowl, dropping those 3 in a row, and 9-3. How far am I off?
I don't think you're that far off. Now, we'll have to see if anything happens, but if you're comparing roster on paper to roster on paper, they should be favored in at least their first 7 games. I mean, maybe Kentucky comes to Ole Miss as a slight favorite, maybe. But, I mean, they'll come out of the gate 4-0 easily with the 4 non-conference games, the Power 5 one being Georgia Tech, who's really struggling. As you said, they have Auburn at home. The schedule sets up for them being on fire out of the gate.
Right.
It's just navigating the 6 consecutive SEC games in a row to end the season. They get a free win with Vanderbilt. At least that's what it feels like anyway.
Like that,
a free win with Vanderbilt. So, I don't think you're far off at all.
Yeah.
As long as they mesh. We'll see if they do. But roster to roster, they're certainly capable of doing that.
Michael Borky has been our guest. We need to share digits, man, because I want to get you on during the season. You know what I mean? When there's time to talk. We didn't even mention state, but we can get to that another time. Ole Miss on the docket here today, man. I really appreciate you coming over and doing a great job with the Rebels.
I appreciate that.
Appreciate you. All right, we're going to get a break in here. When we get back, a dude that has been coming on my show for 15 years that I've never met face-to-face until an hour ago, Lee Sterling, will join us, and he'll give us his take on the teams that are here in terms of win totals, and we'll also touch on Alabama, Auburn, and Tennessee as well. It's all coming up right here on the Thom Abraham Show, 97.7 ESPN, The Zone. And welcome back to Tom Abraham Show. Now, I know a lot of you are tuning in right now, and you think that, okay, this is the open. I'm ready for my monologue. This is not the open. We had a bonus half hour. We got things started at the bottom of the 9:30 hour, and we'll be doing that all week long. So go ahead and mark your calendars for that. If you want to jump in, you can jump in with us early. But for those of you that are jumping in right now, this is our continuing coverage of SEC Media Days from the College Football Hall of Fame in downtown Atlanta. A beautiful venue for this, and we'll be taking you right up until noon. And today's show is brought to you by Brian Hammaker and his team at North Alabama Mortgage. Now, we may get the phone lines open up at some particular point in time today, 256-576-4977. We'll get you into the show. Remember, you can watch the show live as well on Facebook and Twitter at 97.7 ESPN, or you can watch on Twitch and YouTube at WZZN TV. We'll have that for you as well there. And the lighting just changed here at the College Football Hall of Fame because the clouds must have rolled in or something. It's a very interesting setup that we have where they have the Chick-fil-A field down below where they'll be doing all of the the main breakout room stuff. And then, we'll have some of that audio coming up for you a little bit later on. Coming up in this hour, in about 40 minutes or so, Greg Sankey's State of the SEC address. After that, Georgia Bulldog legend Buck Bellew will join me here on set as well, and we'll talk about Sankey's address and Buck's new book as well. We'll get that done. And then coming up at about 11:30 for you, Brian Kelly takes the podium for the first time in the SEC, and we're going to bring you that live as well. So it is very, very busy. DJ Grizzy Grizz is back there mixing the show as well. Now, as I said, Lee Sterling is a guy that's been coming on the show, I want to say, about 15 years. And Lee is a tremendous handicapper, ParamountSports.com. And he's always giving you those great picks during the season. But I got to say, Lee and I have never shook hands. We have never met face-to-face. So here, after 15 years, we finally put voices with the faces. Now, both of us do a lot of video. So I recognized you immediately. I just got to ask you: does my look match my voice? You know what I mean? I mean, did it click for you that way?
Immediately. There's some other guys.
Some guys don't look.
Some guys don't look anything like they sound. So, and we've talked for so many years.
Right.
But no, I knew as soon as I heard the voice, I'm like, I know who
it's
this
like
is.
Paulie Walnuts is doing sports talk radio.
I just didn't know where it was coming from. You were exactly right behind me before I was starting one of my podcasts. But
it's the first time for you, though, for SEC Media Days. I mean,
it is.
This is the first time for you guys to be here. And everybody knows about the handicapping service, obviously, with Paramount Sports. But you're here with Locked On, and Locked On has sites that, I mean, yes, they've got the Lock On for betting and handicapping, and you do the podcast on that. But really, Locked On is a lot more than that, right? I mean, it has to do – it's all the information that you could stand about the SEC.
So, Tom, every professional team, every NFL team, every NHL, baseball, and basketball team, we have a Locked On. Mm-hmm. Every single one. And I think it's now between 55 and 60 college teams. And then we have certain cities. We have, like, Locked On Atlanta, Locked On Minneapolis. And then I've got we've had, like, Locked On the SEC. They've got Locked On the Big Ten. And about 20 months ago, I was a little hesitant to start the Locked On bets. And it just took off. What's crazy is, so even during like basketball and baseball and hockey season, I would say about 25% of the clients that sign up for my selections that don't come from the different 45, 50 shows I do come from Canada or Australia, Europe, Mexico, and it's a younger demographic,
right?
A lot younger people, and they're getting into it. And then also, I mean, I think in the last 2-3 days, I had someone sign up from I think it's White Falls or White something, Montana.
Yeah.
Someone from Wyoming, like upstate New York near Albany.
Yeah.
I mean, so I'm reaching, even in some of the cities that I'm doing, I'm reaching an audience. Like, for instance, I've been doing a show in Seattle for over 20 years.
Right.
And I saw someone signed up. He called with a question. He's like, I asked him, I said, did you hear me from KJR? He's like, no, I heard you from Locked On Bets.
Wow.
So
it's working good. Now, is it based out of Miami?
So I'm based out of Miami. My co-host Q Quentin, he was in Waco, Texas. Now
Right.
he's the program director and sports talk show host in Las Vegas. And I think we have a great chemistry. I think people listen because, and I think why they listen to you is they identify you. They know you.
Right.
They know you. They know your kids. You talk about the Turkey Bowl. You talk about
You just met Captain Cool here, my youngest, who's here now working for the station.
Yeah.
So yeah. Now the reason I asked though about the Miami thing is because it's going to be very interesting because I believe that in 2 or 3 years there will be at SEC Media Days or at Big Ten Media Days a contingent from Miami who covered the Hurricanes. Because I don't think there are going to be any ACC in a couple of years. 2, 3 years.
I would say I think there's a good chance the ACC doesn't exist 3 years from now. I think there's a 50-50 chance they might call it the SEC and the Big Ten. I think you might have like 4 conferences. You might have 4 16-team conferences, 64 teams, and they'll be like in a super conference. I don't think they're going to be in the NCAA. I think college
from a football standpoint.
From a football standpoint. Yeah. And then you'll have maybe the NCAA has those lower level teams, the Rices, the FIUs, the Texas States, the Middle Tennessees, schools like that, where they govern them and, but it's going to be the haves and the have-nots, with what's going on with the money.
Which is what it should be. I mean, let's be honest. There's only, really 50 or 60 schools that can compete, I think, at that level. I think the possibility is, guys, I don't know what you're doing, but I am getting a buzzing now. I don't know if that has anything to do with what you guys are doing. Yeah, it went away. But this is the crazy, I call it the nuclear scenario. Everybody's talking about Florida State and Clemson coming to the SEC. It makes sense. Or Florida State and Miami, or Clemson and Miami, something like that. Well, they have that media rights deal there where until 2036, all of the money would go back to the ACC if Clemson and Florida State left, for example. But there's a codicil in that thing that says that if 8 teams were to leave the ACC, all that stuff is done.
Yep.
So I started thinking about that, and I said, you know what? What if the SEC went nuclear and went after Florida State, Miami, Clemson, UNC, Duke, and NC State, Louisville, because of their thing with Kentucky, Louisville and, say, Virginia Tech, and they can have the Hillbilly Bowl with Tennessee, something along those lines. There's 8 teams right there, and you get a 24-team SEC with 2 12-team, basically sub-conferences that are all under the SEC umbrella. For football, it would be a pain. It's going to take you 8 years to see everybody. But what a basketball conference when you add Duke and UNC to Kentucky and Louisville and everything else. I think something like that could happen at some particular point in time. It may not be 4 16 it may be 2 24-team conferences.
Could be.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I
sounds crazy, but why not take them all?
The teams that are really worried are like Georgia Tech and Boston College. They could be left out.
Syracuse. They're going to have to find a different place eventually. I think that portion of the ACC is going to have to find a different place at some particular point.
And maybe someone like Vanderbilt could be left out.
No, the
you
problem.
don't think they'll be pushed out?
I wish. I have said for years, Vandy belongs in the Big Ten, to be honest with you. But they are a charter member of the SEC, and of course, so was Tulane and the college that is literally 5 miles from my house, which is Swanee, the University of the South up on the mountain. And they were an original member too, but I don't think Vandy will ever go anywhere. They need to make an investment in football. Although, let's say this about that before we get to the win totals for the teams I want to talk about here. You like Vandy Week 1 in Hawaii, is that right? You're digging on Vandy Week 1.
So here's what's going on. I don't know if I've ever backed Vanderbilt as a favorite, but Hawaii only returns 6 starters
off a bad team.
I mean, and they're gonna. It's a brand new offense. I mean, Timmy Chang might get it done. They were literally a couple votes away from disbanding football. Yeah. They were that close. They didn't have money. They were running out of money. They were running at such a deficit. But I think Timmy Chang might do a good job at that level. But they're bringing in a kid, Cameron Cooper, from Washington State, who barely played. They're counting on like maybe 6 guys, 6 transfers coming in and starting Week 1. I mean, you can't be successful at that level. And Vanderbilt is obviously not good. They lost their best player, their offensive tackle. He transferred out. But at least they're in the second year of the system. And I think, they've got some guys that can at least make some plays here. People don't know about them. They got a receiver,
right.
Devian Walker, and also Jaden McGowan. These two guys at receiver. It's 6.5. I think the line's going to close like 8.5, 9 points here. I think it's one of those rare games you want to bet right now if you can wager on it, and I think they win the game by double digits.
I think that Missouri's only win. Missouri is here today. Yeah. Eli Drinkwitz, and it's a shame because I think Eli Drinkwitz is a real character. I think he's really
recruiting East St. Louis really well, but he didn't have a quarterback.
I don't know if he can survive. I think he's got maybe one more year to go here to show some real progress. Right. I think their only SEC win is against Vandy. If they can beat K-State in Manhattan, which I don't know that they can. Probably not. That would be a fifth win. But otherwise, I have them beating La Tech and ACU and Vandy and New Mexico State, and that's it. I got them at one win in the SEC and 4-8 overall. What do you got?
I got at most 5 wins. I mean, the guys that got stepping in at running back, Nathaniel Pete came over from Stanford. He's a nice returner, but he's not a bell cow back. I mean, Luther Burden might end up being the best receiver in the conference as a true freshman. The kid is dynamic. He's great. They got a kid, a couple transfers, Mookie Cooper from Ohio State.
Right.
They'll score against like the dregs, New Mexico State. They might put up 50, 60 points, but they're not going to complete many passes above 15, 20 yards. Brady Cook is nothing. Jack Abraham, nothing. These guys can't push the ball down the field. When they play anyone good, even like on the level of like Auburn in Florida, that offensive line isn't going to be able to hold them off. So I think,
and it is the same Jack Abraham. Some of you are thinking, wait a minute, what? I thought he was at Southern Miss. It is the Jack Abraham that was at Southern Miss. But when you're getting transfers from Southern Miss, the graduate transfer to be your quarterback in the SEC, you got problems. The name notwithstanding, you got problems.
Their run defense was horrific last year. They gave up 5.3 yards per carry. In that game against Tennessee, when Tennessee beat them, I thought they gave up like something like 70 points. 62.
Yeah.
62-24. Tennessee could have scored 80 or 90 points if they wanted to. I mean, they couldn't stop anyone. They gave up 458 yards on the ground. The only thing stopping them was the back line of the end zone.
Right. Hitting her head on the goalpost.
It was the worst run defense I've seen in the SEC in 30, 40 years.
That's the familiar voice of Lee Sterling, Paramount Sports, sitting with us here. We're looking at some of the win totals for the teams that are featured here today. Let's go to LSU. I do think that they'll beat Florida State in that opener. I think Brian Kelly will get a lot of love off of that. They beat LSU. I have them coming out of the chute 4-0 after beating Florida State. They beat Southern Mississippi State and also New Mexico. I have them dropping that game at Auburn. It's a swing game there. I think that's a key game. I have them beating Tennessee at home. I have them losing at Florida and to Ole Miss and to Alabama and to Arkansas. So you're going a 4-game losing streak. Beat UAB and lose to Texas A&M. I have got Brian Kelly and the LSU Bengal Tigers at 6-6 to open his run there.
They could go 5-7. I mean, you're counting them at 4-0 to start the year. I think they split Florida State, Mississippi State. I mean,
really?
Jaden Daniels, have you watched much of him? See, the average person is not going to watch Arizona State. They don't stay up till 10, 11 o'clock at night and watch Arizona State. Jaden Daniels is not that good. I mean, there's some games where he is just not accurate. I think he has trouble with his progressions. I mean, Arizona State's not too upset he's leaving. Yeah. And then, they're going to count on maybe 3 brand-new starting guys in the backfield. And the only guy that's a returning starter started at the end of the season, Jay Ward. They got lit up last year like a Christmas tree. Florida State and Mississippi State, I'm not putting it out of the realm that they lose both of those games, and they're 2-2 after that headed to Auburn. So I think Brian Kelly will eventually get the job done. But 7 wins? I'm going way under.
That's the win total, right?
That's the win total. Yeah. I'm going way under the 7 wins.
So we're under on LSU, both of us. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt and going 6-6 there. Ole Miss is here. We just talked to Michael Borky about Ole Miss. So those that were listening in the bonus half hour.
What did he have? What did he have?
We both have him at 9-3. And here's the thing: I got them at 8-0 out of the chute, and they'll be top 6 or 7 if they're 8-0 out of the chute. But I have them 8-0 out of the chute, and their non-conference schedule is just not that difficult, and they catch Kentucky and Vandy out of the East, so I think they win both of those games. I think they win at Auburn, and I think they go to LSU to get their 8th win, and everybody's hip hip hooray. Then they stub their toe and take 3 straight losses at Texas A&M, against Alabama, at Arkansas, win the Egg Bowl, and finish 9-3 in their regular season. Of course, a lot depends on who the quarterback's going to be, but I do believe enough in Lane Kiffin to know that he'll make the right choice, and whoever's the quarterback's going to get it done for them.
So I have a slight lean to the over. I have them winning 8 games.
What is the number for them?
7.5 minus.
Okay. Oh, that's
over.
Too low. Yeah.
Well, it's minus 135.
Oh, okay.
So
All right.
if they go 7-5, you're paying a lot of juice. I do have a slight lean to the over, but Jackson Dart, did you see the spring game? He was awful.
He was, but he's been improving. I mean, and you listen to Lane Kiffin talk about him, and Lane Kiffin said he was trying to win the game, he was trying to win the job on every throw, and he's got to learn to just calm down
and maybe the green light goes on. Luke Altmaier looked much better.
Yeah.
And I think there's a chance Luke ends up starting the season. So
the key is, are they going to start? Are they going to play defense the way they played the second half of the season last year? Because they were terrible defensively, and it was that typical, Lane Kiffin defense. But they did get better game after game after game later in the year. Yeah. And if they can continue to improve, he just has to have a scenario where 30 wins some games. He doesn't have to score 40 or 50 to win a game. You got to, he's got to win some games with 28 points.
And some people, get mad because, of, like the Alabama game, lost 42-21. He was playing to win. I mean, he was taking chances. You're trying to win a game. He's not trying to cover. Yeah. So if you had that Ole Miss in that game and you're getting 14.5, there's a different way to approach the game. He was trying to win, and I give him credit for trying to win. He was aggressive. Things just didn't work. He knew he couldn't go toe-to-toe for 60 minutes. He was hoping to hit on a couple breaks. Didn't work out. I love their running game. I love their running backs. I love Zachary Evans. I think he's great. I think even Ulysses Bentley is really good at SMU. I think they might have the best running backs in the conference. But other than that, they're pretty good. They're nothing special. So I have them at 8-4. Their quarterbacks might hold them back.
All right. Lee Sterling with us here. Let's talk about Alabama. Last year at this time, I sat here at this desk in Hoover, and I said Alabama was going to be 11-1.
Yeah. I
didn't know who they were going to lose to, but I said they're going to just stop. It's just hard to go undefeated.
Right.
They're going to be 11-1. I feel like this year they're going to be 11-1. When I look at it, they're going to be favored in every single one of these games. They will be favored in every single one of these games. They are going to go nuclear on Texas A&M. They're going to blow the doors off of Texas A&M. I believe that. I look at I think that the Texas game is more competitive than some people think. The Arkansas game could be problematic if you're looking for a place where they might stub a toe. And going to Ole Miss, if something freaky happens, you turn the ball over 3 times or whatever. I don't know where there's a loss in there, but I feel like they're 11-1. What do you think?
They're 11-1 or 12-0.
Yeah.
And they are better than Georgia. Just Georgia has an easier schedule.
Yeah.
So maybe Tennessee gives them a game. They can hit on some big plays. Hooker's good in that offense, but I mean they just don't have any weaknesses. Maybe eventually. Well, the only thing that stopped them last year was their receiving core getting hurt.
Right.
Couldn't throw the football.
Should have been a national champion.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
I mean, Georgia talent-wise was better, but Georgia, almost gave them the game. The first half, I was there for the taking. I think they would have won the game if they didn't have those wide receiver positions. Bryce Young just makes it look so easy. I think their running backs, I think Gibbs looks really good.
I think they're better in the running. Everybody talked about Brian Robinson. They're going to be better this year running the ball. That offensive line needs to tighten up a little bit. They were last year was unusually sloppy, and I think Phil Steele, who we had on last week, he has their offensive line ranked 13th in the country in terms of offensive line ranking. And he says that's the lowest I've ever had in Alabama.
They're usually
offense.
1 through 5.
1 through 5. Yeah.
Sometimes even 2 and 3 at the lowest.
Yeah. That's so we'll see how they bounce back. Auburn is interesting. Tell me if Auburn's going to beat Penn State at home, because that's going to tell me whether or not they're a 7 or 8 win team or whether they're a 6 win team. Does Auburn beat Penn State at home? They're going to win their first 2 games and get a good tune-up going. Because if they beat Penn State, then they beat Missouri, then I think they beat LSU. and then all of a sudden Auburn's 5-0 when they go to Georgia and get their knob wailed. And I think they lose at Ole Miss, and I think they lose to Arkansas. So I think they go, come out. I have them coming out of the chute 5-0 if they can beat Penn State at home. That's, to me, the swing game.
Such a tough game. Both quarterbacks I don't love, Finley and Calzada, who comes over from Texas A&M. They got to run the football more. You got to control the line of scrimmage. And, here's the thing I tell people. Two most important positions in college football. Quarterback, they're average at best. And they're two defensive tackles. That's where they're weak this year.
Yeah.
So I've got some pause for concern with this team. Their receivers drop too many balls. And Bixby's great. But other than that, they're also counting on 3 or 4 transfers to start for them on defense. And when you're counting on 3 or 4 transfers to start in the SEC, I think it spells trouble. I don't think Penn State's great this year, but that might be one of those games I just sit there and watch and maybe the week before I've got a better feel, but right now I couldn't tell you which way I'm leaning.
He doesn't survive Brian Harsin 7-5.
No,
I think 8-4 is the number. I think he's got to be 8-4 for them to continue to and a good looking 8-4. Well, because if he goes 7-5, 6-6, hell, they were trying to fire him last year. He doesn't survive that.
Everyone's getting better on that side pretty much. A&M is a recruiting juggernaut right now. Yeah. Alabama keeps rolling. Arkansas out of nowhere. So, he's got to go 7-5.
I'm high on Arkansas. I'm high on the Hog.
Well, I will say this about Arkansas. I think Sam Pittman's a better coach when he's a dog. Yeah. So, like Nick Saban is not great when he's laying 30, 35 points. That by the end of the third quarter, he's taking guys out looking towards
he doesn't have it's not his mindset to lay the wood to people. You know what I mean?
Sam
he needs them to keep coming in. You can't just lay the wood to people.
Everything went right with them. Without those 2 stud receivers, I think Arkansas –
I like their quarterback.
No, I think he's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those 2 guys were studs. You talk about guys that – you had guys that caught 66 and 24 passes for a total of 13 touchdowns, averaging 14 and almost 17 yards a reception.
Yeah.
Pretty tough to duplicate.
All right, finally, Tennessee. Yep. This is the little girl with the curl. Everybody's excited. I said, you know what? I sat here last year in Hoover, and I said 7-5.
Yeah.
I said they were going to be 7-5. You look at the schedule. I said they're going to be 75. Everybody lost their freaking mind because they went 7-5.
Yep.
And now they think they're going to be 9-3, 10-win team, and all this kind of stuff. I don't see it. I like Hendon Hooker. They're going to score a lot of points. They're going to give up a lot of points. You know what I think? I think they're 7-5. I still think they're in that same mindset. I think Pitt's pretty good, even with the guys they lost. I don't know that Tennessee goes to Pitt and wins that game. And in Florida has owned them for 100 years. They got to beat Florida at home. Going to LSU is a problem. Alabama's a problem. The Kentucky game's a toss-up. They're going to get whacked by Georgia. Let me tell you something. I think they're going to lose at South Carolina.
I got them at
7-5. I
got them at 7-5 or 8-4. It's one of the ones I'm staying away from. So I think people people are going to catch up to that offense. When Josh Heupel came in, there were some sets.
They did with Gus Malzahn. Remember Shock and Awe?
Right.
2 years later, he couldn't move the ball.
Right. So the offensive line is still good, and Hooker's really good for that offense.
Right.
But running those dual 2 receivers on each side, hey, people are going to spend the entire offseason preparing for them, and I think they're going to have a little bit tougher time. So I've got them at like 7-5, 8-4. I'm just staying away from the total here, which is 7-5 minus 160 to the over.
Yeah, I wouldn't go to the over today. I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Good seeing you, man. Good talking to you. What day are we going to do this year? Right? We need to lock in our time.
We do a Friday. Friday. Did
we do Fridays? Yeah, we did do Fridays.
Well, let's stay at the same time.
All right, we'll keep it Fridays.
If I move, I'm doing 45, 50 shows. When you're doing one show.
When you were doing my show 15 years ago, how many shows were you doing then?
25, maybe.
Really?
In that range, yeah.
I thought it was the first show you ever did.
No? This is my 20.
Sure? No, I think I was I'm pretty sure I was the first.
Let me tell you real quick the story.
I didn't even think anybody knew of you before you did my show.
So here's how I got into the business. I was managing and leasing shopping centers.
Yeah.
Went back for a college reunion.
Yeah.
Go back, and 2 of the guys in my fraternity said, hey, you used to pick all the winners for betting. Why don't you come on and talk about some of the games? So I came on 2 different shows, one in Houston, one in St. Louis. And after we finished the segment, they're like, people want your number.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I don't have one. They're like, get an 800 number. So I got an 800 number, and I started getting calls. People wanted to sign up. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to give it a try in the off season. I sent out 12 cassette tapes to different stations across the country in the mail. I had to look them up. I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows how I did it. Maybe got a phone book somehow in these different cities and got the program director or the on-air host. 10 took my show, and I had those 2 from the year before. Started with 12 shows. I quit my job, and 29 years later, I'm still doing it.
Look at that.
Yeah.
And you play your picks.
Oh, yeah.
You're not a guy, because a lot of guys are a handicapper. Yeah, he gives his pick, but he doesn't play his picks. I want a handicapper that plays his picks.
Yeah.
I want him to feel the pain with me, and I want him to celebrate with me, you know.
I do, because I'm pretty even keel.
Yeah.
It affects me more when I hurt, my
Right.
clients. So, but yeah, I play every single game. I mean, I've had some guys say, "Oh, you're not betting this game," and I'll send them a copy of my bet.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, right, exactly. Lee Sterling has been our guest. Lee, I appreciate you, man.
All right.
Always good.
Sounds good, Tom.
All right, we're going to break in here, and coming up, we're about 15 minutes away from Greg Sankey, so we'll have a short segment for you in the next segment and turn it back around, and then the commissioner with his State of the SEC address is coming up right here live on 97.7 ESPN, The Zone. And welcome back to SEC Media Days. Paul Feinbaum actually will be joining us on Thursday here on set with the Thom Abraham Show. That'll be really good. It's always nice to have my annual visit with Paul. It's always fun. Coming up in about 8 minutes, we will have the State of the SEC address from Greg Sankey, and we'll be carrying that for you live. So we just have a few minutes here on our set, and now joining me, a young man, we call him Captain Cool, all right, is what we call him, and you know, he's my youngest son who graduated from UAH with a degree in communications and is a hot shot with all of this cameras and video stuff and everything else. He works very closely with Chad and making all of that stuff happen. He works closely with Scott Tyson as well on all our social media stuff. But you have been to these SEC Media Days in the past when it was in Hoover as a little kid, just kind of come in and the Junkyard Babe would come and you guys would come and you'd walk around at the Galleria and do all that kind of stuff. This is your first time, though, working one, and, of course, we're here at the College Football Hall of Fame. You have not moved 10 feet from our set, but this is a pretty cool scene, isn't it?
I mean, I went down to the bathroom, so I think I moved a little bit.
So you got to see that.
I got to see a little bit.
A little bit of Radio Row.
More people out there, but it's definitely a nicer venue than just like a hotel, you know. I mean,
I
it
think
is
it's
very
clunky.
cramped.
It's clunky for us
cramped.
from a working standpoint. It is nicer than the hallway
You got
at
stuff
the
to look
Winfrey.
at.
But but there everything is condensed. You go up the elevator, boom, you're there. All the breakout rooms are there. This is. I mean, you got to go outside, I believe, unless there's a way, I don't know, to get over to the Omni. I think you got to go outside and then back inside to get to the other rooms, and it's clunky.
It's a maze.
But it is cool, and we've taken our social media game to another level thanks to the work that you're doing here with us. We got multiple camera angles and so on, WZZN TV. People can check it out on the Twitch and on the YouTube channel as well. And I would expect that you – and the Bandyman and Smokey Mike Honcho are getting very excited about launching your show on our sister station, the Blitz Streaming Radio, coming up a week from today, man. 1 week from today, you guys hit the air with the afternoon Blitz from 1 to 4 in the afternoon. I know you guys were in the studio over the weekend practicing a little bit. You think you're ready or what?
I think we're pretty good. We got on, make sure we don't step on each other's toes and all that stuff. But I think, we're talking loud enough. We're being, assertive. We're making sure, we're talking about the right subjects and all that stuff. So I think we're doing a great job with that. And I think it's going to be even better with the streams that we're going to be doing, because it's going to be like the pinnacle of what we want to do on all of the shows going forward. So I'm excited for it, and I'm excited that we were able to do this in the first place, have the stream live on location. It looks beautiful, looks nice, looks clean. My computer is getting low on battery, but it's sitting on the charger right now too.
Oh, you got it plugged in?
I got it plugged in. Hey, but it's sitting on.
How does it get low on battery if it's plugged in?
So OBS takes up a lot.
You just lost me. You just lost me.
There you
OBS,
go.
boom, you lost me. I'm done.
It's the application I'm using right now, and it takes more power from the computer than it can charge. So right now it is on its last leg, but it's still going. It's going to stay on 5% for the rest of the day, unless I get some time to charge it.
We'll have some time once I'm done. There'll be a little gap where before the afternoon drive comes on later on with Wes and Steve. All right, so people can get the Blitz. We'll let you know when you can get the Blitz app. There'll be an app for the Blitz that is separate, but right now they'll be able to get the Zone app. If they get the 97.7 ESPN The Zone app, there is a link to the Blitz, our streaming sports radio station, and we're going to be telling you more and more about that. But those guys will start with their show with the afternoon Blitz. We're also going to have the recruiting Blitz with Drew DeArmond on there, which will be an hour show every day from 9 to 10. It's going to be neat. There'll be more ESPN programming there, play-by-play sports. It'll all be on the Blitz streaming radio. So, good luck with that deal, man.
Oh, thank
you.
Try
not to sound too much like me.
Do I sound like you right now?
A little bit.
Okay, well.
The thing is, you hear my show every day, so you got to be careful that you don't.
Thank you.
Oh.
That's what I thought.
Chad thinks you're cooler than me because you're Captain Cool?
Yeah.
If you're Captain Cool, I'm Commander Cool, okay? Just remember that. You got your cool from me. I taught you everything you know. I didn't teach you everything I know, but I taught you everything you know.
You taught me something.
I teach you how to shoot a little stick last night,
hey,
didn't I?
That was pretty cool. I will give you some.
Didn't know the old man
put
could
some
do
respect on that. All right, he was draining those 8 balls and stuff.
Bank shots and everything else, just kind of. took Steven Scott out behind the woodshed last night on that. All right, we're going to break it here. When we come back, Greg Sankey is up next with his State of the SEC. This is the Thom Abraham Show. Today brought to you by North Alabama Mortgage on 97.7 ESPN, The Zone.
in contiguous states, which supports a reasonable geography among like-minded universities and keeps us confident that fan interest will continue to grow in our communities, in our region, in this country, and literally across the globe. There's no sense of urgency in our league, no panic in reaction to others' decisions. We know who we are are confident in our collective strength, and we are uniquely positioned to continue to provide remarkable experiences educationally and athletically, along with world-class support to student athletes. It is a compliment that people from all across the country and all across the globe want to be a part of the Southeastern Conference. We understand our fan base in our region. We have an outstanding relationship with our media partners, effective in the fall of '24, Disney, ABC, and ESPN, with a focus on how we continue to strengthen the SEC network. And I appreciate the talent, those of you behind cameras, those working in production that we never see, in directing and coordinating to make what we do this week the best TV of the summertime. As you know, when we go through this change, we are considering how to schedule. And so some of those decisions were made in Destin, but our football scheduling model is still under consideration. We had deep and productive conversations in Destin. Those conversations actually began back at our meetings in August. And when we concluded our discussion in Destin, we had a focus placed on a single division model with the ability to accommodate either an 8-game or 9-game conference schedule. And I'll wink and say we could even accommodate a 10-game conference schedule. I see all of you look up. I just wanted to see if you're paying attention. So that's actually not our focus. We ended, though, with the understanding that more questions needed to be answered, including understanding the general timeline and the issues that need to be addressed as we think forward now about the college football playoff. We have to dig through a tie-breaking procedure. So we have over a quarter century in divisions, and we understand all the nuances about how to break ties. But we have to dig a bit deeper there with this single division concept in front of us. And we want to understand the impact through the use of analytics on bowl eligibility for our teams who are growing their programs, and college football playoff access dependent on the number of teams that might be included. And so there are a range of possibilities being considered. We have time to make a decision, and as you've seen before with us, particularly in the last few years as we dealt with some difficult issues, we're going to use that time to inform our decision-making and not be subject to an arbitrary deadline. The national issues, though, go beyond the Southeastern Conference, beyond the college football playoff, beyond conference membership changes, and include important conversations about the future of the NCAA and its ability to be effective at leading the overall collegiate athletics enterprise, and how we effectively support young people who choose on their own to engage in name, image, and likeness activity. Last July, on that list of issues we've seen over the last year, the NCAA's Board of Governors issued a press release that included these words, quoting, "The Special Constitutional Convention is intended to propose dramatic changes to the NCAA Constitution and to reimagine aspects of college sports so the association can more effectively meet the needs of current and future college athletes." And that same press release included statements like, "College sports must quickly adapt. This is not about tweaking the model we have, and we cannot go on as we are." At the end of that constitutional effort, what's really changed? You need to ask yourself that question. Did we need that effort to get at some of the Division I problems? I would submit not, but someone is correct in that statement that we cannot go on as we are. In October, the NCAA announced formation of the Division I Transformation Committee, and I'm proud to serve on that committee with co-chair Julie Cromer and 19 other individuals who have spent an enormous amount of time trying to sort through the difficult issues we have. The press release announcing creation of the Transformation Committee referenced the complexity of issues in Division I. That observation was spot on. There is a complexity of issues that doesn't lend itself to the easy button and not necessarily to immediate resolution. And so those issues include the need for a meaningful membership process, dealing with enforcement and infractions issues where college athletes face uncertainty and penalties related to actions that may have taken place when they were in junior high or elementary school. We have a rule book that simply grows and grows and grows. We have a governance process that has key committees and councils populated by participants who rarely, if ever, speak, and who are being asked to make important national policy decisions when they may not have that same authority on their day-to-day work context on campus. We have a bureaucratic process that leaves issues languishing for months or for years. Again, it's correct. We can't go on as we are. We're making progress on those issues. In August, the Division I Board of Directors will receive a report which won't solve every problem, but will deal with issues around enhancing the student-athlete experience, modernizing the transfer rules, dealing with that rule book and trying to reduce it, and refining that infractions process with a focus on bringing matters to conclusion in a timely manner. And then as we look at the fall, we're going to have some difficult issues around membership. That issue was not created by the 5 conferences labeled the autonomy conferences or by FBS. It was assigned to the Transformation Committee by the Division I Board. We're going to have to determine how to make effective decisions in Division I. And there are incredible disparities around revenue, around expenses, around support, and around expectations in this division. It makes it difficult to ensure the presence of shared values and common purpose around supporting athletics programs. We also need to make sure we enhance the experience for student athletes in NCAA championships. What's happened before can never happen again. I don't expect that will be easy, but it's important and will play out through the fall months. I did not mention name, image, and likeness because that's been reserved by the Division I Board of Directors. And on May 9th, you saw a statement from the board that I think was helpful. The question is, what's happened as a result? We need clarity from the NCAA National Office on what's happening and what will happen under the NCAA Division I Board of Directors directive. It's a difficult issue, subject to the onset of state laws that came into effect last July, and since that time, some of those same states have pulled back from those laws because it's in the state's competitive interest to do so. It's exactly what we warned about dating back to 2019, that a patchwork of state laws was the most ineffective way to approach name, image, and likeness. And here's our view. We need a clear, enforceable standard to support national championship caliber competition and national championships themselves, like the College World Series, the Final Four, and the College Football Playoff National Championship, and every other national championship. So there is a connection and a common basis for competition. Our student athletes, we just had a Student Athlete Leadership Council meeting. They asked us for clarity and for uniformity and for institutional support of their name, image, and likeness efforts. A national standard would mean that high school juniors and seniors and their families don't have to sort through dozens of different state laws or institutional policies where state laws don't exist. It's an unfair way to treat young people making a college decision. And a common standard would allow them to have clarity around the rules and policies that govern their own decision-making and activity. Our football coaches were unanimous and unequivocal at our spring meetings when they discussed name, image, and likeness, that booster activity should be completely removed from the recruiting aspect of their work. Our young people deserve consumer protection to ensure commitments they make do not create long-term entanglements and points of exploitation that reduce or eliminate their future earning potential. And lastly on this list for now, there's an absence of oversight for those described as agents. These aren't agents as we've come to know them over time, or NIL businesses that approach young people and families directly with offers with no transparency. That gap needs to be addressed, and the unregulated marketplace calls for action. The NCAA govern this space. To put state universities in conflict with their own state laws is an impossibility, and litigation limits the extent to which the NCAA can actually act, and that's why the continuing identification of Congress as the opportunity to set a national standard remains important. We did have conversations that if there's not a national standard, we need to explore if we can have common state laws among our 11 current states, eventually to be 12, to support healthy name, image, and likeness activities. Do we face headwinds in college sports? Absolutely. It's actually not new. It's a decades-old problem, and those decades-old problems now rest firmly on our agendas. The SEC will not be complacent, even with the knowledge that we're in a position of strength. Now's the opportunity and the time to continue to support our student athletes, and to the extent we can do more, we actually do more. We must take the step forward to make sure the experience that's present today is there tomorrow and for decades to come. One of the great things I'm able to do is visit with leaders of today, our presidents and chancellors, athletics directors, and other key campus leaders, and the leaders of tomorrow. Those are the young people on our teams, which is why, despite the difficulties, despite the challenges, knowing the successes that are present, I'm confident that the best days of the Southeastern Conference still remain ahead. So with that, Kevin, I'll turn it to you, and we can entertain some questions, and we'll see how I do with the answers.
Thank you, Commissioner. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Jack, Jake, and Preston, we will get a microphone. So we're going to start right over here in the middle. Ron, go ahead, Ron. Please give your name and affiliation.
Yes, Ron Higgins, Tiger Details. Greg, do you anticipate maybe Texas and Oklahoma coming in the league early ahead of time?
That's not up to me. That's about the relationship between Oklahoma, Texas, and the Big 12. We are focused on the addition being effective July 1st, 2025.
Okay, we're going to go down here on to our right, second row.
Richard Johnson, Sports Illustrated. Greg, with what's happened in the country the last few months, in addition to it being an election year, do you think that that makes it even more difficult for Congress to do something to make a clear, enforceable NIL policy?
Go back, Richard, to March, and I made a list in a meeting of matters present, you know, a war in Ukraine, the economy, Build Back Better that was introduced and not moved, and the differences that exist in Congress. And we have a midterm election coming up, and things that have happened over recent weeks and months have just added to that. The reality was, when I had that conversation in March, I wasn't looking to necessarily this Congress to be the solution, just because of the timing. We've had conversations with leaders from both sides of the aisles, and we'll continue to do so, because regardless of what's happened recently or what happens with the election, we need a bipartisan solution for this national concept to move forward. And if we don't, then we're going to be left not simply creating conference rules. We're going to have to deal with state laws that vary in our region, and that was actually part of our conversation in Destin as well. But the focus will remain on a national solution, and Congress is the venue for that option.
Okay, we're going to go right over here on the left, about 4 rows back.
Greg, John Sokoloff at WCBI TV in Columbus. You mentioned one of the bigger issues with that single division model was the tiebreakers and figuring out that stuff. What are some of the other issues when y'all think about finalizing that single division format?
John, you didn't even have to introduce yourself, because I was in Omaha and heard you ask a question in those press conferences leading up to the Ole Miss National Championship. So welcome to Atlanta. The list of issues, so tiebreakers one, the number of games and what that means from a scheduling standpoint, the imbalance around 9 games versus the comfort with 8 games. What happens with non-conference schedules, and we have a requirement that that 9th game right now be among an Autonomy 5 type opponent. How do we dispose of or maintain that particular policy? The impact on bowl eligibility and college football playoff access, I mentioned. When I go through 6 different teams having won national championships in the last 25 years or so, no one comes close to that number. So the level of competition here, while people want to be a part of it, we're attentive and sensitive to that. Just to be clear, nobody from TV is saying do this or do that. This is a conversation and a decision to be made among our conference membership.
Okay, we're going to stay in the same section, 3rd row back. Kirk.
Kirk Bowles from the Austin American-Statesman. Greg, do you sense a lot of support for a model with 3 permanent rivals, or are you anywhere close to a consensus on that? And is there any interest in expanding beyond 16 teams right now?
The first question is it's under consideration, Kirk, and there are limits on the number of options available for 3 permanent opponents based upon the number of games. 9 makes that more practical. If you remember, I had 2 points when we expanded that I wanted to be front and center. One is that we engage in blue sky thinking, just let's look at the big picture. And the second is we rotate our teams through campus as frequently as possible so we don't go 12 years between visits. And so those 2 have guided us. That last one relates to the number of games, number of permanent opponents, and how many times you can move people through cleanly. And that's exactly the point of conversation. Embedded in my remarks is we're attentive, we're engaged in conversation. The great news for the Southeastern Conference is that people call and say, hey, you're doing something really special, and they kind of hint around the edges. As I went through, we know who we are. We're confident in our success. We're really looking forward to the expansion and being at 16 teams, and don't feel pressure to just operate at a number. But we'll watch what happens around us and be thoughtful but be nimble.
Commissioner, we'll go to our right, 2nd row.
Charles Odom with the Associated Press here in Atlanta. Following up on what you just said, you said you don't have a sense of urgency or panic in reaction to what others are doing, but in looking at what others are doing, does it affect your receptiveness to those calls that you say you're receiving from others? Do you see this heading toward a conglomeration of super leagues, and do you have to be proactive to be at the front of that?
Well, somebody will write that a smart aleck guy, we are a super league. I mean, when I walk through the recitation, this is a super league. So as I visited with our presidents and chancellors and ADs, now understand the timing is this news broke June 30. I did not gather that group until the next Wednesday. I wanted to make sure I learned what was actually happening. But also I didn't want a story like on Friday, the day after, oh, the SEC presidents are gathering, and then you have this ripple effect of they're going to do something. And so we wanted to be patient and wanted to communicate. Again, we're comfortable at 16. There's no sense of urgency, no sense of panic. We're not just shooting for a number of affiliations that make us better. Could they be out there? I would never say they're not. I would never say that we will. We're going to be evaluating the landscape. I'm not going to speculate. And I actually am watching a lot of this activity operating around us, more so than impacting us directly.
Okay, we're going to go right back down here in front, 3rd row. Bob.
Hey Greg, how you doing? Bob Holt, Arkansas Democrat. This is kind of a multi-part question. I was curious, what lake was it where you were on vacation? And did you get to take any vacation? Did you have any inkling what the Big Ten was doing? And do you think Texas and OU trump USC and UCLA when it comes to adding teams to a conference?
I'll start at the end, yes. I'm not sure we want to use the word trumped all the time these days, but be careful about that. We're in contiguous states. It's a southeast quadrant. I do have a few letters about what's southeast mean, but we are in the southeast quadrant of the United States. Those two additions actually restore rivalries. You know, the Texas-Arkansas game last year was pretty special, but that goes back a long way. Obviously, Texas and Texas A&M rivalry will be like our in-state rivalries across the league. You have Missouri and Oklahoma that are a quarter of the Big Eight that are now part of the Southeastern Conference, and the opportunity for Arkansas and Oklahoma to play regularly. I think that's right. That's who we are. Those fan bases get it. One of the very first calls I had, it's like, hey, we watch how you've made decisions in the Southeastern Conference and how you want to achieve as universities and athletically, and we want to be a part of that. Absolutely, it's right. Did I have an inkling? I'll be honest with you that about 18 months ago, I said, here's some projections of what could happen, and those two schools were part of it nationally, but I didn't know that this was about to happen on June 3rd. And try to project what takes place and guess. That type of movement was somewhere in my thinking, but not at that moment. And it's where I grew up, in Skaneateles, New York. Skaneateles. So I've lived in two places that are tough to spell, Skaneateles, New York, and Natchitoches, Louisiana. You're going to have to get Natchitoches on your own.
We'll stay in the same section, a row back.
Hey there, Greg. This is Lane Higgins from the Wall Street Journal.
Where are we at, Lane?
Right here. I wanted to ask you about how your thoughts on access to a college football playoff might be evolving, because I know, before this latest wave of realignment with USC and UCLA moving, you had been very adamant on an 8-team model with 5 automatic bids. And
No. I'm going to come back to that, but
okay.
I meant against that.
Against that.
Not supportive of that.
Okay,
Yeah,
right.
I'm sorry.
You had strong opinions about it.
Herb's going to get on me for interrupting you, so I apologize, Lane.
That's okay. But I'm curious how your views of what a potential model when the playoff would expand might look like, given that we are in this current state of flux where maybe the conferences are changing and, maybe automatic bids might not be given equal weight given where conferences are heading.
Just to be clear, and I apologize for my rudeness there, but that one, somebody's live tweeting, and I'll be credited with that thought. I walked into one of the first meetings when we were looking at the format and said, if we want to expand to 8 teams for the playoff with no automatic bids, I'll have that conversation. But moving to an 8-team playoff and granting what we're going to be 6 automatic bids and reducing at-large access is unwise. And in fact, if you look, I think 2014, you would have replaced the 8th best team in the country with the 20th best team in the country. I don't think we can survive that from a credibility standpoint. But the pressure was there to have conference access with some guarantee, and so the 12-team, 6 at-large, which increases the at-large access, and 6 conference qualifiers, not automatic qualifiers, but the guarantee to the 6 best conference champions, was a really good balancing outcome. But things have changed, and I was clear back in January when we walked away from the conversation that we as a conference weren't unanimous in our support. I had, as commissioner, moved people forward to the point we were supportive as a league. And if we're going to go back to square one, then we're going to take a step back from the model introduced and rethink the approach. Number of teams, whether there should be any guarantee for conference champions at all. Just earn your way in. There's something that's healthy competitively about that and creates expectations and support around programs. Where we go, we'll see. We've had one initial conversation in late June. I walked into that meeting not very optimistic about the ability to talk through issues, and I walked out much more positive about the path forward than when I walked in. And there's a lot of work to do. We have time and we'll use it, and it's the same type of issues that you've heard, AQ or no AQ, how many teams, what's the relationship to the bowls, when do we play these games on a calendar. We really need to look at that more deeply than we did in the previous iteration. So we'll see how it goes, but those are the realities. But I'd be fine with no AQs, whether it's 4 like we have now, it's a model that's worked, 8, 12, but the inclusion of conference champion access was I thought an effective compromise at a 12-team playoff.
We have time for a few more. We're going to start right here on the front row on the right.
I'm just curious about the NIL. I know we were talking about Super Conference. Can you talk about how that has helped us acquire the title of Super Conference and how you see that progressing in the SEC?
I think we, the Southeastern Conference, were a super conference before name, image, and likeness. In fact, I provided that clever answer a few times over the last 7 or 8 years. There are any number of good stories. I was up the road here an hour in Athens, Georgia, when Auburn gymnastics competed and Suni Lee was cheered by everyone in Stegman Coliseum. You don't get that much between rivals when they're cheering for an individual student athlete. I'll state, Karis Jackson talked about a Bojangles deal when he was in Destin with our leadership group, talking about, I think it was 45 steps to making a Bojangles biscuit that he engaged in on social media. Olivia Dunn at LSU is one of the good stories, very prepared, very ready for that. Those are the activities that we thought would be present and should be present, allow young people to build the brands. And I think there are many more stories beyond just what you read in recruiting that are positive. But one of the concerns up front was that we not do this state by state. We need uniformity. That feeds in to our ability to have national competition during the regular season and support national championships. And so the notion of some oversight, transparency, regulation of the market, I think, is exactly what helps everyone. And I'm convinced, regulated or unregulated, we can do well, but I think the unregulated market creates a set of problems for the people involved, whether it's young people and their families trying to make decisions, the potential for long-term life entanglements and deals that aren't understood and evaluated, the lack of support, the taxation that comes. But we've also allowed it to enter into the recruiting space in a really weird way, and I think that needs to be made healthier than it is right now.
Okay, we'll go back over here to the right in the middle.
Hi, Greg. Michael Giddens, The War Report. Given some of the public comments from coaches about the effect of NIL on recruiting and the classes, is there a feeling from the conference office that member institutions are abiding by the spirit of NIL rules? And how's the conference office supporting educating athletic departments on best practices when it comes to NIL?
The issue is, are they abiding by their state laws? So whether it's spirit or not spirit, the issue that goes back when we're in consultation is, are you following the laws of your state, or in the past, in one circumstance, an executive order in our footprint. It is uncomfortable. It is a new dynamic, and we're going to have to manage through that discomfort. I don't believe everything I read. You're great writers. You're great at what you do. But I don't believe everything I read has the depth of information or the depth of analysis, because what I've not read is the points of concern where young people have lost opportunities or promises and commitments haven't been fulfilled. I look forward to reading those types of analyses. But the focus from the conference office is on providing guidance back to the states that have to provide the information. And we provide educational information. It's tough when that changes routinely through states. And in our footprint, there are 11 different state laws, and then you have questions coming in about the laws or lack of laws in effect in every other state as well.
Okay, we'll take one final question over to our left, second row.
Hey, Greg, Ben Portnoy from the State Newspaper. In Destin, you had mentioned that there was at least a hope to get the scheduling model resolved by the end of the year. Is that still kind of a realistic timeline? And you'd also mentioned that Texas and Oklahoma had been involved in those discussions. When it comes to realignment as well, I guess how much are they able to be involved in those discussions as well from conference level?
Last one, we invited both the athletics directors and the presidents and chancellors into our conference call a week and a half ago, just so, because this is a long-term issue that has impacts beyond just the here and now, so that they could hear my analysis and ask any questions of us and hear questions asked by our other campus leaders. When we moved into August last year, we had an athletics directors meeting that happens each August. We actually invited both to attend so that we could set this by video, so Zoom, since we're really good at Zooming now, so they could hear the introduction of how we're going to consider information around scheduling. And when we've had important updates or important conversations, they've been a part of that. We did not invite either university to Destin this year. Just becomes its own story and distraction. And you may recall we had enough storylines heading into Destin already. So we provided actually updates to them through the week, and They've been great emerging partners in this process, talking about their interests and priorities, just as our other 14 do.
Commissioner, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you for being here, and look forward to the interaction that we'll have in the coming days, and I'll see you back here in just a moment for my first head coach introduction. Thank you.
All right, there you have it. That was Commissioner Greg Sankey, and some very interesting things that were said there along the way, and I'm sure some of those comments will go viral throughout social media, and that we'll hear in the future. But we can't go on as we are is something that is, I think, very important. Incredible disparities in what we call Division I level. Need clarity on NIL from the NCAA. Booster activities need to be removed from NIL. I don't know what else they are but booster activities. And regarding expansion, he said, we don't feel pressured, but we'll look around and see what's going on, and we'll be nimble. And finally, he did say that the Oklahoma and Texas edition to the SEC trumps the USC and UCLA addition to the Big Ten. It restores rivalries. It's half of the old Big Eight now when you add in Missouri and Texas A&M from back in the day, and they are all contiguous states, all very important things. All right, we're going to get a break in here. When we come back, Brian Kelly will be introduced, and for the first time, we'll hear from him as a head coach in the SEC right here on the Thom Abraham Show, brought to you today by North Alabama Mortgage, 97.7 ESPN, The Zone. It's the Thom Abraham Show today, brought to you by North Alabama Mortgage. And we just heard from the commissioner, Greg Sankey. We are awaiting Brian Kelly to the podium. And Brian Kelly, it's going to be very interesting to see how he handles his very first ever SEC Media Day. Is he going to come in with like some sort of accent? You know what I mean? Do you think that Brian Kelly will have an accent? He just came walking in across the room and here at Radio Row, and he'll be downstairs. But I'm wondering. Steve Moulton is here with me as well. Steven, is that a hot mic that you're on over there? I don't even know what number you'd be on. Like 15? You'd be on like
I'm on 4.
You're on Fader 4? Fader 4 there?
Yeah.
So do you think Brian Kelly will come in and say, first thing I want to do is welcome all y'all you come on down here to Atlanta. I'm glad that you're down here in Atlanta,
That'd be Ed Orgeron. I don't know if
he'll do Ed Orgeron? You don't think he's going to do Ed Orgeron?
No, I think he's going to leave hopefully keep his shirt on. And
do you think he'll be on one of them little spinny dance things, that do his pressure while he's going around in the corner, spinning around in circles like he does with the recruits maybe?
I mean, it seems to be serving him decently well for recruits, so
yeah,
we'll see.
Program note, this is going to go a half an hour. Possibly. Is that right?
Yeah.
I thought the main
room.
I thought they were 20 minutes or 30 minutes or 15 minutes once the coaches start.
You're thinking of the electronic room.
Yeah, maybe I am. I didn't know they went a half hour, but
the main room is the main room.
That's when Nick Saban gets up there and pontificates for like 25 minutes and then takes 3 questions.
And then takes pot shots at the media for getting
Not
their
asking
picks
questions.
wrong.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So Brian Kelly is coming up here in the main room, and this is going to take us right through the top of the hour, so we'll be done basically at that particular point in time.
Yeah.
So just a program announcement, as far as our great sponsors go and so on. You know who you are, and you do a tremendous job. We'll get it made up down the road. Now Chuck Oliver is here, so Chuck Oliver is be following us. So
Paul's here.
I think what we'll be doing is we'll carry Brian Kelly right to the end, and then join Chuck Oliver in progress. Does that make sense?
And then Paul is here, of course.
And then we'll roll right into Paul, at that particular point in time. So, Grizz, just let our affiliates know
we'll
down
get
the
started
line.
here in a few moments. Again,
that's what we're
when
doing.
we get to the Q&A portion of Coach's presentation,
So
we'll
I
ask you to raise your hand, and we'll bring a microphone to you.
All right, we'll get to
Please
Brian
state
Kelly
your name
right
and
now.
affiliation before asking your question. We'll get started with Coach Kelly here shortly, and we will take questions. Following Coach Kelly, LSU's players will be available. You'll see 3 stages located throughout the field here. The individual LSU players will be at one of those stages, and those will be scrum interviews. You're welcome to approach those players when they are seated following Coach Kelly's remarks.
We are awaiting Brian Kelly's walk up to the podium. It's just a nice stroll. He's taking his time with the stroll. He is strolling.
Well, you know them Southerners. You know what I mean? They like to, they like to take they're probably having biscuits and gravy right now. You know what I mean? He's got a little sweet tea. That's with them down there. They're already behind schedule.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he was supposed to become. Now, let me ask.
The commissioner was supposed to be done at 11:15.
Yes, he was, which bumped Buck Ballou for us.
All right, good afternoon. It's good to be back without a long presentation from me. First coach to introduce is the head coach of the LSU Tigers, Brian Kelly, who is a 3-time National Coach of the Year, 2009, 12, and 18. He led Notre Dame to the BCS championship game in 2012 and 2 CFP semifinals. A little side note for me, I had to take dancing lessons yesterday. My younger daughter's getting married. My dancing lessons are not on video. Brian, though, has had his dancing ability on video. When he was asked about it, he said when a 5-star quarterback asks you to dance, you dance. And when your youngest daughter asks you to dance for a wedding, you take dancing lessons in my case. This is Coach Kelly's first appearance at a conference media event since 2009. Off the field, he and his wife, Pocky, she's a 2-time breast cancer survivor, have a foundation named Kelly Cares that's donated nearly $6 million to over 190 causes around the globe. Please welcome LSU Tigers head coach Brian Kelly.
Good afternoon. Certainly a pleasure for me to be here at my first, as Greg mentioned, my first media day since 2009. I think for me, it kind of signifies college football is back. We can now point our attention towards that. And for me, all of my attention is focused on our LSU football team. It's been quite an interesting 6-7 months as I has been exciting for me. It started with the right time at the right place. The timing was right for me. The place was perfect. We had an incredible president, President Tate, an athletic director that I had history with Scott Woodward, and a rich history and tradition with LSU football. And so for me, it was then taking on that great opportunity in front of me to be part of restoring championship quality football to LSU. Also, the chance to be part of this incredible conference, the SEC. The challenges that come with that. Playing the great schools. I've never been in many of the venues. I'll get an opportunity to play at Auburn this year. I'll get a chance to play at Kyle Field, in the Swamp. Those will be exciting opportunities, something that I've never experienced in my career of 32 years. So the challenges of being in the greatest conference in college football, as well as being at LSU, is I've been asked many times why, and I can tell you that certainly that shared vision of our administration, the great opportunity to restore championship level, the SEC itself, and being part of this great conference. For me, it's been, as I mentioned, an opportunity to put a roster together in a very short period of time creatively. We've had to use the transfer portal. We've recruited. We've spent a lot of time in player development, and we will then give everybody an opportunity to say against Florida State, and we're excited about that opportunity. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you, Coach Kelly. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Jack, Jake, and Preston will get a microphone to you. And again, please give your name and affiliation. We're going to start right here in front of us, Coach, about 5 rows back. Go ahead.
Hey, Coach. Colin Wilson with the Action Network. So when you took over...
Oh,
hey,
there you are. Thank you.
When you took over Notre Dame in 2010, you had a new quarterback with Jimmy Clausen, new offensive line, and Notre Dame had some. Anything we can learn from that experience for LSU to be undefeated with Mississippi State, Florida State right out of the gate?
Well, now that you put it that way, I hope not. Certainly we have 4 quarterbacks, and the spring really was for us to lay down our offense. We weren't really going to gear it towards any particular skill set. So I feel much better about the depth in the quarterback situation. Dane was really the only quarterback that had any experience. We were young and inexperienced at that position. I think the depth at the quarterback position is much different. Jaden and certainly Miles bring us obviously starting experience. Garrett, obviously, for me, is an exciting quarterback. Walker's a true freshman, but there's great depth there. The offensive line is clearly an area that we need to keep our eye on, but I think we've added some really good transfers, and we think we've got some young men that have developed. So I would say that right now I stand in a similar situation and the opportunity to be much better than 2010.
Coach, we're going to go down in front of us here on the front row. Ron?
Yeah, Ron Higgins, Tiger Details. It's been kind of documented, maybe LSU or the collective of NIL of LSU doesn't have as much funds as other schools. How do you overcome that? And have you run into a situation yet where maybe you were outbid for a player? And how do you overcome that?
First of all, I don't know that we don't have as many funds. Nobody has given me, any kind of documentation that we're behind. I feel very comfortable, quite honestly, as I stand here, talking to you, that, what we're doing relative to NIL is as competitive as anybody else. I don't feel like we're being outbid by anybody. I don't think that's the place of NIL anyway. So if we were being outbid, then we're going to be outbid if we have $50 million in our collective. So I don't feel hamstrung by that. I want to continue to educate with NIL. I want to be able to use the resources wisely to help promote name, image, and likeness, and have that available for our student athletes when the time comes.
Coach, we're going to stay here in front of me, 3 rows back.
Drew DeArmond, WZZN Radio, Huntsville, Alabama coach. So much of coaching is teaching and then earning the trust of your players. How has it been with Miles Brennan, Keyshawn Butte, John Emery, those guys that maybe that are going to be the key parts of your offense? How have you earned their trust so far?
Well, I think trust is a two-way street, they're earning my trust too. I think, it works both ways. First of all, trust is about saying something and backing it up. And then, I think continuing that relationship. We're working on that relationship every day through deeds, through things that we put in front of them and say that we're going to do for them, and backing it up. And then asking them to do some things for us and seeing that they back it up. I think in all 3 of those cases, we're building trust. As you know, Keyshawn was just awarded number 7, which we consider, a program number that highlights the very best player, in particular from the state of Louisiana. And that has to happen when trust has been formed. Miles has been one of our best leaders in our program. John Emery's done an incredible job of bringing himself back into our program. So I think you brought up 3 guys that have earned a lot of trust, and we're trusting them.
Coach, we're going to stay right in front of him in the second row. Tom?
Hey, Coach Thom Murphy, Arkansas Democrat Gazette. I wanted to ask you about your secondary, what you feel about the talent level there, and the 2 transfers from Arkansas, Fouché and Brooks, how you feel like they might fit in.
Well, let me address Fouché and Brooks. They have been outstanding additions to our program. I know many don't like to see that happen within the league, and I'm not crazy about it either. But these are 2 Louisiana kids that wanted to play at LSU, and they have been great additions. Character, I would say that, when we were looking into the transfer portal, we wanted young men that had SEC experience and had ties to the state of Louisiana. And Brooks and Fouché fit that to the T. And I think the secondary has a number of players that went out and recruited either through the portal or that were in the program that give us great depth, but they're going to have to go out and prove it. And I think that's an area that is going to have to come together for us, but we think we have depth and we think we have some talent there.
Coach, we're going to stay on my side, 3 rows back. Kirk?
Kirk Bowles from the Austin American-Statesman. Coach, I wonder why you feel like you're a great fit for LSU since you haven't been in the South that much. And corollary question is that what do you think of Texas and Oklahoma joining an already great conference?
Well, I think fit is about, the ability to run a program, at the highest level. I've done it for 32 years. I've had success at Notre Dame, Cincinnati, Central Michigan, wherever I've been. So, running a program and then, developing players, player development. I think those are the most important thing. And I don't think that needs to be, geographical in a sense. I've gotten to love where I'm at in Baton Rouge. I love the people. They love football. They love family. And they love food. And that fits me really well. So I guess I should have been in the South all along. I love the fact that Oklahoma and Texas, two great programs, are coming into the SEC. And, that speaks to Coach Sankey and understanding, the lay of the land and being proactive and having two great institutions coming into the SEC. We'll be excited about when they officially join to have them on the schedule as well.
Coach, we're going to go over to your side, second row, Glenn.
Hey, Glenn Gilbo at Outkick.com. Having been at Notre Dame for quite a while, would you be surprised if they joined a conference, or do you think they'll stay independent, and just what do you think of their philosophies toward that?
It's probably not been high on my list of things to think about. I've been trying to correct a slice for the last couple of weeks, and I haven't had much success with that, so I'm going to go back to my day job. But I would say that, certainly Notre Dame still is, a coveted, university in terms of, what conference would want them. Jack Swarbrick knows what he's doing. His ear to the ground. They're going to land into a good position no matter what they do, whether they stay independent or whether they go into the, one of the other conferences.